Big Evasive and YouTube. This is High Radical. I'm going to do something a little bit off of what I normally do. I'm going to actually read stuff I've written out. There was so much I wanted to say, and I didn't want to take forever saying it. It would have, as it is, it's probably going to fill up a couple of videos. And so I would ask you, first of all, to forgive me in my reading of it. Anybody who's read my comments knows that I get overly wordy at times, and I try to be efficient in what I say, and so at times I reference words that aren't commonly used. If you don't understand, my apologies. I always like looking at dictionaries myself, but I know that's not everybody's favorite thing to do every time they're listening to someone. And I hope not to sound overly ostentatious in my presentation. I again tried to get this as concise and exact to my views, and of course as convincing as I hopefully can get it. I first off want to thank you for your respectful reply, Big Evasive. It's clear to see your I don't know exactly how to put it, frustration or incredulity, or a combination of many things along that vein, but you do very well in demonstrating your view of what you see as my absurdity on this, and I respect you for that. And the first, again, I'll be reading a lot of this, so I hopefully will not sound canned or overly canned or what have you. So I'm going to go in and read this, and we'll see how it turns out. So let's see, let's keep track of the time. In the first place, let me say that it's a crime and a shame what's happened far too often within our faith, the LDS Mormon faith, in the case of families dealing with issues as shattering as the loss of family members for anything, be it divorce, estrangement, death, disease, and any other number of afflictions. While I personally haven't experienced this, I know many that have. I know, Big Evasive, you spoke of the difficulty of your circumstances in your growing up and being in the church where these ideals are. I've seen also some elements of this with regard to singles in the church. There's a statistic recently that pointing out that there's a third of the church membership is single, and that's a significant portion of the church membership. And the whole family paradigm, singles, it's not the same as some of the other ones you brought up, but anyway, it's wrong for victims of divorce, child, teen, or adult, to experience any kind of stigma for their condition, especially in the gospel setting. And I do mean that. It's wrong, and I'm sorry for the many cases in which it's been experienced, and I don't doubt that it has been at all, because again, I haven't seen it firsthand, and I won't pretend to know what it's like. But anyway, I'm going to try to address this from different angles, because you've presented quite a few different and substantial arguments going against my whole Davos. Let's watch that. I also hope to further lay out the merits and, as I see it, a rational basis for my placing the idea of an ideal family setup. Your first major, and I believe strongest contention, is that panaceas do not exist. There is no proof or support for utopian-centered endeavors. I may or may not shock you with this, but I fully agree that there is no provable nor demonstrable formula or path, nor any rationally laid out plan by which humanity will reach a state of transcendentalism, nor foreseeably get remotely close to it. The old cliche line, the best laid plans of mice and men. We tend to think of ourselves as very advanced, and antiquity, and we view antiquity as generally very backward. One of the problems with our new techniques and technologies and scientific theories is that they magnify the bad in our nature as much, or more seemingly at times, as they do the good. We can We can power everyone's home on the planet if we wanted to, relatively cheaply with minimal pollution. And we could feed in excess of 10 billion people using just presently arable lands and without bringing more lands under cultivation. Unfortunately, we also have the capacity to eliminate entire metropolises of people without even sending a single agent from whichever part of the world is sending that condemnation. There's a talk Hugh Nibley gives in which he starts out, and for those who don't know, Hugh Nibley is one of the most acclaimed contemporary scholars. He's passed on, but then there's a talk in which he starts out demonstrating that the instance in which humanity rose to its height, the closest it's ever been to enlightenment and transcendentalism, is found amongst the Greeks. He points out how there's ne'er a concept or principle that we can address that hasn't already been said and laid out better by some Greek. Now, you can argue that point, but the main thing that Nibley points out in his relation to the Greeks is that all plans of humans come to naught. All the best laid plans that we come out with are laid to naught. And he presents the tale of Oedipus as an archetype of human nature. In that we have the best setup. Oedipus is wealthy, he's talented, he's intelligent, he has good fortune, but in the end it's turned to naught. This is pointing out the problem in much of human endeavors, that the valiant and moral and ethical people sometimes can end up in the most deplorable and unfortunate of situations seemingly through fate, and then scoundrels, knaves, and moral sinkholes can seem to come out on top and accomplish what they were seeking to accomplish. So I agree with you that there's absolutely nothing I can set forward to convince you that panaceas can work or even exist. The only two examples of utopia coming to fruition are found in our LDS or Mormon, and again this is from my perspective, sacred texts, and are not at present even meant to be something provable or demonstrably historical. A whole community taken up to heaven or an egalitarian society existing for 2 centuries in America are both items that simply lack evidence beyond their mention in our canonical literature. But I'd ask you to think about the likes of the founding of the U.S. There was really no precedent in all of history for it. I'm not saying that its founding was a panacea. That much is obvious. Yet, do you feel we're better off for having sought for an ideal that we've failed to and are still failing or falling woefully short of? Do you feel that the creation of the U.S. overall has made the world worse or better? I want to share some of the comments of Benjamin Franklin about his thoughts on the Constitution as they were finishing up arguing about it in the Constitutional Convention, and to many it looked as though it wouldn't pull through, that it wasn't a viable thing, that this whole experiment wasn't going to work. And these are the words of Benjamin Franklin that he gave in a speech. Again, this is kind of in regards to some of your labels that you've put to my presenting of the ideal of a family, labeling it as a pipe dream. That was what many were coming to think about the Constitution and the concept of democracy in America. Franklin says, and this is in his Sun Rising or Setting, where he asked that question, where he for a long time hadn't known if it was rising or setting. But this is the quote. He says, "I doubt too whether any convention we can obtain may be able to make a better constitution. For when you assemble a number of men to have the advantage of their joint wisdom, you inevitably assemble with those men all their prejudices, their passions, their errors of opinion, their local interests, and their selfish views. From such an assembly can a perfect production be expected? It therefore astonishes me, sir, to find the system approaching so near to perfection as it does. Thus I consent, sir, to this Constitution because I expect no better, and because I am not sure that it is not the best. On the whole, sir, I cannot help expressing a wish that every member of the convention who may still have objections to it would, with me, on this occasion, doubt a little of his own infallibility, and to make manifest our unanimity, put his name to this instrument. Clearly, as is the case with our present condition, the ideal is, and would be, found lacking in its execution. People are not perfect and are subject to all sorts of conditions that alter our prejudices, passions, interests, errors of opinion, and our selfish views.